Let's talk about Kim Jong Un, the leader of North Korea. Everybody knows he's going to play a big role in the upcoming conflicts and challenges and the transition that the world is going through. But in this video, I'm going to look at the astrology to decode the guy and to give you an exact prediction for when Kim Jong Un is going to escalate things on a global scale. So make sure to watch this video until the end. There's going to be an exact prediction. Right, Kim Jong Un, this is an eccentric leader. He's a real personality, very unconventional. There's a lot of crazy stories about him, like that one time when apparently he fed an uncle of his to 120 starving dogs because the uncle had done some kind of transgression, or that time when he had a military official executed because the guy fell asleep at a meeting. Or also there is a rumor that he passed a law to have every male North Korean student have the same haircut as him. So I don't know if these stories are true or not. There's really no way for us to tell with the hermetically sealed off status of North Korea. We can't really communicate with people there. People don't have access to social media. But be that as it may, he is a eccentric guy. Clearly, he has dictatorial tendencies. It could be true, but that's not really what I want to focus on in this video. I don't want to go too deep into the personal eccentricities of the guy. What I do want to look at is his astrology in order to decode what he's all about, what his mission is, what he perceives his mission to be, and how that feeds into the larger theater of conflict that's erupting right now, the World War III escalation that we're seeing happening in front of our eyes with all those big players that we've talked about before on this channel. How does his particular perspective and what he perceives to be his objective and his mission, how does that fit into the big picture? And as I said at the beginning of the video, I'm also going to give you an exact prediction for when things are very, very likely, in fact, overwhelmingly probable to escalate with Kim Jong Un. But first, let's get into his chart and let's get a grip of this character. So what you can see here is the chart of Kim Jong Un, and we don't have an exact birth time. We're working with, we don't know. So that's why it says 12 noon here, but basically we don't know. The date of birth, however, is well known. And, the data already gives you the major constellations. And because we have asteroids and stars here as well, this actually tells you quite a bit. Quite a bit. Obviously, it would be preferable to have the time, but even without the time, as you'll see, we'll be able to see quite a bit. Okay, so first of all, the first thing that stands out when you look at his chart is this Pluto-Mars conjunction here, okay? Pluto-Mars conjunction. And in general, generally speaking, Pluto-Mars is that type of intense drive that adds to the aggression, right? There's kind of a intensity. There is a collective element as well, which derives from being bound up into the collective fate or karma of others, whether that's a family or a people or a nation, right? So collective stories of violence and histories of violence. And there's also this kind of access to the deeper layers and levels of the psyche, which adds that shadow element, which adds that intense element to the aggression, right? So you're going to see a lot of very intense people with Pluto-Mars. Could be athletes, but also could be, very ruthless kind of people who ruthlessly pursue a goal or a mission, right? And warriors, clearly, right? And that's the general understanding for anybody who has Pluto-Mars. But with him, right? And here's where asteroids and stars come in. I always keep saying this. That's where you move from the general psychological reading, which anybody can do and which kind of applies to anybody with that constellation, and you move into something very specific, which only applies to that unique person or very, very, very few people, right? So in this case, his Pluto-Mars conjunction is with Princeps, the star. Princeps, you see here, this is a fixed star, it's a royal fixed star. It's one of the most important stars. It's the boss star, okay? So he's the boss of warriors, right? He's the boss of intense warriors. And then it's with Bellona. You see here, Bellona, this is an asteroid. Bellona was the Roman goddess of war, okay? The Roman goddess of war is here as well, and Princeps is here as well, right? So it's not just any Pluto-Mars conjunction, right? This is Pluto-Mars who is the boss of war, right? So this guy really is driven, and he's not going to be this is one thing I can tell you right away looking at this, is that this guy is not going to be afraid of anybody, right? He will not be, fear is not known to this guy, right? At all, right? So if you tell him like, okay, you're going against superpowers, they might come and destroy your entire country and so on, he won't care, right? It's absolutely, like with this constellation, this is somebody who's going to go against overwhelming odds without fear, ruthlessly, because he feels that's the right thing to do. Now, if we continue looking, there is a Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. Here, you see Jupiter-Neptune. Okay, Jupiter-Neptune with Mercury. And this is on the galactic center, right? The galactic center is here. I didn't put it in right now, but that's here. Okay, the galactic center makes everything bigger. It gives things a universal importance, a global importance. Okay, and Jupiter-Neptune, this is basically this great idealistic belief, right? It's also in Sagittarius, right? So double that, triple that, right? This is this humongous idealistic belief, right? The belief in great things that are possible, in great ideals that are possible. Obviously, communism is also related to Neptune. He's a communist leader, right? He believes in communism. He believes in the mission of that he thinks he's representing. You know, the case, whatever the case may be, this could be the global south, this could be the rise of the BRICS, this could be multipolarity, or it could be simply socialist, people's republic, communist beliefs that he has. But any, mix up of those beliefs, whatever they are, he really believes in those, and it's going to be extremely powerful, these beliefs, right? They're going to be so powerful that they're driving him into a holy mission almost that he believes he is pursuing. And this missionary zeal, it connects, as you can see here, in a sextile, right, with the warlord, with the great lord of war, with the boss of war, right? So Jupiter and Neptune comes into a sextile, giving him, prowess. First of all, Jupiter with Pluto, Jupiter with Mars in a harmonious relation, but also giving him higher intuition, a sixth sense into when to act, when to move forward in war. He's going to be a great strategist, right? A great strategist, like a legendary strategist, historical strategist. He's a young guy right now, so he probably doesn't have the experience to really fulfill that. But with time, he has the chart of somebody who can become a historical, legendary strategist in war, right? Now, if we keep looking here, we're also going to see on the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction here, the asteroid Icarus. You see this here? Icarus is marked here, which is conjunct, right? So Icarus, the story, I'm sure you know it. It's from the Greek mythology, the son of Daedalus. Daedalus and Icarus, they get trapped somewhere on an island where they're abducted. And then they decide to build these contraptions where they can fly towards the sun, right? They can fly, basically, they can fly into freedom, into liberty. But the father, Daedalus, warns Icarus not to fly too close to the sun, because this contraption, this early aircraft that they had built, it was built with wax. It was a makeshift kind of rocket that they had built, right? It was a makeshift aircraft. So the father warns him, right? Don't get too close to the sun. And lo and behold, Icarus does get too close to the sun because of his hubris, right? He kind of thinks too highly of himself. He thinks nothing can happen. And the sun melts the wax and he falls into his death, right? Now, this is interesting from multiple perspectives. In astrology, the stars, the asteroids especially that we see, their connotations, their mythological connotations, they have an insanely high level of correspondence and correlation with the life stories that unfold in our lives, right? It's just time and time and time again. If you follow this channel, by the way, if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to this channel right here. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel because you're gonna learn so much more. We've only scratched the surface right now of this knowledge, which is so new as well, because the majority of the asteroids were only very recently discovered. It didn't exist before, so we never had access to know the insane level of detail that cosmic providence has written into our charts. Now back to Kim Jong Un. This guy, obviously, he's known as Rocketman. He builds these rockets, which are kind of contraptions that are flying, that he really believes in and that he's identified with. And he seems to have built nuclear weapons as well. But it's possible that some of these weapons may not be as sophisticated as he thinks they are, right? Because he's sanctioned, he doesn't have access to a lot of technology. They're building everything on their own. Now, they've done a great job comparatively, relatively, but it's also possible that some of their weapons are not capable of doing what he thinks they should be able to do when wartime comes. Keep that in mind and let's continue with the story. Okay, so let's get back to the chart and let's continue to see what we got here. So the sun, it's a Capricorn sun. This is going to be a guy with a lot of patience, right? Determination, patience to continue his plan, to wait for his time. The sun, it's with Credo in Industria. This is a guy who really believes in industrial prowess. He believes in building patiently, right? Which you can see he's been doing. And he's building up the industrial power of North Korea. North Korea is now even supplying weapons to Russia, right? And the sun is with China, asteroid China, right? So he really identifies with China. Now we're starting to get into the territory of, who are the friends and enemies, right? Who are the friends and enemies of this warlord with the big vision and the insane kind of level of belief that this guy has in himself and in his prowess and in his mission, right? So who are his friends and who are his foes, right? So let's have a look at that. We see some things here in the chart which are quite telling. I'm just going to move this here so you can see it as well. So as I already said, China is with the sun. He really identifies with China, right? On a personal level. He completely identifies with China. Then what else do we have? We have here, down here, see here, down here, we have Juno with Russia. Juno stands for partnership, right? Juno stands for partnership. Juno was the consort of Zeus, right? So Juno stands for the marriage or like the divine partnership, right? So Juno is with Russia. And this constellation, Juno with Russia, is exactly opposite his Mars-Pluto, right? The Mars-Pluto here that we said, the warlord, right? The warlord. And here we have Juno with Russia, right? The divine marriage or partnership with Russia. And this is bound up here in an opposition. And on Mars-Pluto, we also have Europe. You see this here, Europe? So Europe, this could be played many different ways, but it's pretty clear here that in Russia's opposition with Europe, right, he's willing to step in as the destroyer, right? As the destroyer, as the powerful force, which adds something to this conflict, right? And interestingly, the asteroid Hubris is here too, Hubris, right? Hubris, you see, it's also in this constellation. This constellation is literally, right, the warlord with Europe, opposite Russia and Juno, right? The kind of divine partnership, like divinely ordained, like high, beautiful partnership, right, with Russia. And hubris is here too, right? So you can put the more, you can put these elements together yourself and start to read the story. And this is so interesting. Astrology is basically like a language, and you have these different elements in there. And once you start to not just see the elements, but you start to see the story, it all makes sense. And it all is so beautifully arranged, and it all so beautifully correlates and corresponds with the story as it unfolds in our everyday experience on the global stage, right? So he has this partnership with Russia. He's willing to interfere with Russia's opposition to Europe, to be a player in that battle, in that confrontation. And he identifies with China, right? What else can we see? Let's go back here. So you see here, the sun with China, which I already showed you. What's here as well? Taiwan. You see? This is an exact opposition, right? So we have the asteroid China, you see here, and the asteroid Taiwan, right? In exact opposition to each other. See here? Exact opposition. So he's also, his personality, right? His self-understanding, he's perfectly willing to, he's bound up basically karmically into this opposition or this confrontation between China and Taiwan, just as much as he's bound up in the opposition or confrontation of Russia and Europe, right? See here? Okay, so this is what the charts show us very clearly. Now, let me get to the part that I promised you in the beginning, where we're going to look at when things are going to escalate with Kim Jong Un. Okay, we're getting closer. We're getting closer. But actually, I have one more thing to show you before, and that's his relationship with the key players, right? So, as I always say, we have, in astrology, we're looking for multiple hits, not just one. It's fine to see the asteroids there. That's a tendency, that's kind of a personal tendency that exists. But obviously, there's lots of other players, there's countries, there's other leaders. We need to look at more charts. It's not enough to just look at that and then conclude something from that. So it's important to see what's the relationship between the main players. And if we look at that, if we look at Putin and Kim Jong Un, I want to bring this up here, you see very clearly what's happening here is that Kim Jong Un, his big belief, right, his Jupiter in Sagittarius, it's exactly on Vladimir Putin's Mars. You see here, this is Vladimir Putin's Mars, right? Exactly on it, right? So Jupiter on Mars, it means that he's going to be a huge help for Vladimir Putin's aggressions, for Vladimir Putin's Martian drive, war drive, right? So for any type of martial drive that Putin has, Kim Jong Un is going to be a natural, huge help, right? Jupiter exactly on Mars. And then the warlord here, this is Kim Jong Un's warlord constellation, right? The Pluto Mars. This warlord constellation is exactly on Vladimir Putin's ascendant. So Kim Jong Un's warlord energy basically energizes Putin, makes Putin more aggressive, makes Putin much more aggressive, but also adds to his personal power, right? So this is crystal clear that, these two guys are going to fight together. They're going to be on the same side, and they're going to be helping each other. And obviously, we know that already from the latest statements after the last visit when Putin was there in Pyongyang and met with Kim Jong Un. Kim Jong Un, already as much as confirmed that he will send soldiers to Ukraine, right? There's rumors there. We don't know exactly what's going to happen next, but apparently he's preparing. He's preparing to send up to 100,000 soldiers to Ukraine, North Korean soldiers, right? I'm sure that's already prepared. And, once the time comes, when the time comes, it's going to happen like this, right? Because they will be prepared to do so. And then let's see the next case. Let's look at Donald Trump. Now, Trump is an interesting case. He went to North Korea, right? They had this famous tete-a-tete where they met and, they were Trump was playing this up big time. He was kept, talking about it, that he was the only one who was able to get a meeting and whatnot. But I don't buy that friendship. That's not it's not what it looks like, right? And I can tell you how here. I can show you how. Because, and by the way, I'm talking about Trump here because the assumption is that Trump is going to come back into the White House in November, right? Barring more assassinations or more, God knows what, God forbid, whatever else there, crazy things could happen. But this is the likely scenario right now, right? So with Trump in the White House, this is going to be an important relationship to look at. And Trump's friendship with Kim Jong Un is not, what it looks like, right? So this is, he's got his Trump's sun and moon opposition, right? It's exactly on Kim Jong Un's Jupiter, Neptune, or the other way around, right? This big belief that Kim Jong Un has about his mission is exactly on the moon in opposite sun. So Jupiter opposite sun in general, Jupiter opposite sun in synastry, it oftentimes gives you this these kind of exaggerated praise for each other. Basically, Jupiter opposite sun in synastry, right? It means exaggerated, like grand praise, right? They're praising each other, but it's kind of awkward. It's kind of weird. Like it's too much. It's not authentic. It's not natural, right? It's like this excessive praise for each other because they want to kind of each make each other look better, right? But I mean, Trump also has his moon here, so Trump kind of feels good with the guy too, right? Trump feels he's going to feel good with him, right? It's going to be a good, a feel good kind of relationship for Trump, right? Trump actually feels good about going there and spending time with him, writing a letter or whatnot, whatever it was he did. But that being said, there is some hard stuff going on here too, right? There's some difficult stuff here going on here too. On the one hand, you got the Pluto square Saturn, right? So Kim Jong Un's Pluto square Trump's Saturn, and this is difficult. This is basically always leads to very difficult breakdowns of the relationship, and it leads to structural. Basically, the power of the one, right, of Kim Jong Un runs against the structures that the other one is establishing or that he's a part of, right? I said it differently here. The power of Trump, right, is going to run against the structures of Kim Jong Un, right? So that's one thing. And then this warlord constellation of Kim Jong Un is also in a wide square to Trump's Saturn, right? So this is not what it looks like. Like Saturn square Pluto, square Mars, Saturn square Pluto, both ways in the synastry. This is, sooner or later it's going to lead to a big clash between the two. Big clash between the two, right? Big clash, big crash. And then all of the big praise that was given to each other before, it will kind of even, they'll have a bad taste. It will leave them both with a bad taste, right? Because it was already excessive before. So that's that with their relationship. The last one I'm going to tell you about is Xi Jinping, right? Xi Jinping is the last one I'm going to tell you about. Why? Because this is very interesting. All right, here we go. Here's a chart. Kim Jong Un, Xi Jinping. Okay, so here what we've got is, on the one hand, the warlord constellation here, right? Kim Jong Un's warlord constellation. What does Xi Jinping place on it? He places his Saturn on here. Okay, his Saturn. So Xi Jinping is going to be a blocking force. He's going to be a moderating force. He will kind of try to, don't move so fast, you're young, you don't know what you're doing. He's constantly going to try to moderate him, to keep him back, to hold him back, right? To kind of manage him, right? He's got his Saturn on there, on the warlord constellation. But that being said, there's also this opposition here. So you see here, Sun Mars this is Xi Jinping's aggression drive, right? This is his go-getter mentality and drive, right? And this is opposite Jupiter. So when you have a Jupiter-Mars opposition, as opposed to when it's a Jupiter-Mars conjunction, as with Putin and Kim Jong Un, right? This is different because when you have the opposition, there is also this kind of mutual pushing each other to, to get going, to make bigger moves, right? To support each other. But at the same time, there's also a tendency for things to get out of hand easily, for things to get excessive easily, right? Keep that in mind. Now, finally, I'm going to get to the time window that I talked about, okay? So, and then we're going to put all the puzzle pieces together in the final prediction and prognosis that I'm going to give you, okay? So, now, here we go. The chart that you're seeing here is Kim Jong Un's transit chart, okay? This shows you what he's going through currently, what's getting triggered, what the experience is, right? Like what is happening in his life. And first thing you notice right away, and I'm going back a little bit to show you that this has been going on for some time, is that there is a square of transiting Pluto here to his warlord conjunction, right? His Mars-Pluto is getting squared by Pluto, and this has been going on for a long time, right? This has been going on for a couple of years now, basically, like 1 or 2 years, right? So this happened, when did it first happen here? 22, right? Kind of end of 22, this came in, right? Mid 22, basically when the Ukraine war started, right? So a little bit earlier already, before mid 22, end of 22, right? So this happens, this starts to come into being. And since then, he's on edge, right? He's on edge. When you have transiting Pluto, squaring Pluto and squaring Mars, you are going to get into large conflicts. You will get into bigger conflicts, right? This is unavoidable. You're going to make big enemies and you're going to get into big conflicts. That's what's going to happen, right? Every time. And obviously, it has already happened with him, right? He's made much more enemies. He started to partner up with Putin in a much bigger way. He's starting to confront others in the region as well, constantly. But all of this, right? It's still it didn't escalate to the point where you said, okay, he's went out and attacked South Korea, for instance, right? Who are the candidates that he could attack? South Korea, right? Less obvious Taiwan, right? It's possible. Japan is possible. The US even, he's threatening it, like maybe US bases in the region. And Europe by proxy, right? Through Ukraine. Those are all possible targets, right? For our friend here, for Rocketman, right? So as I said, so far it's been rhetorics, right? It's been rhetorics, it's been threatening, and we haven't seen any concrete actions that would make any of this come true. But now here it comes. There's a constellation coming, which is going to change everything, right? It's going to change everything, and that's here. What you see here is that Mars, towards the end of the year, in November, right? Mars comes here in a direct opposition. This is transiting Mars in a direct opposition to Pluto, and both of them are creating this T square here with his warlord constellation, right? And this, now, if it was just a week or if it was just a day or whatever, okay, it would be bad, right? Would be dangerous. But this is not a week. These are 2 months, from November, early November, all the way to January. You see here, to January. Why? Because of retrograde motion. Mars goes back in front and then goes and comes back again and hits it one more time in April. You see here? But this is really the really, really dangerous part. Why? Because, first of all, Mars and Pluto are going to be opposite each other for 2 months, right, in the sky. And this is crazy. With the world state right now, where we are right now, this means a massive escalation of all conflicts globally, right? And this massive escalation, which we're going to see November to January, November 24 to January 25, it triggers exactly Kim Jong Un's warlord constellation, right? For 2 months. For 2 months, it's going to trigger it. So I'm going to make a very clear prediction here. In those 2 months, a little bit after, a little bit before, give or take, November 24 to January 25, Kim Jong Un is going to escalate things in a very significant way. That means sending soldiers, sending missiles, declaring war even, right? Surprise attacks, anything of the kind. Those 2 months, they're very, very dangerous for the world at large because of the situation we're in, because of the crazy situation we're in, and because of that constellation, which really means war and which really means the further expansion of existing conflicts. And that's going to be in the sky for 2 months. So that being said, we're going to leave it here. We're going to leave our analysis here. We will have to see how things play out. We will have to see how things evolve. On this channel, we will keep monitoring. We will keep looking at the astrological and metaphysical backgrounds of things as well. So make sure that you're subscribed. Make sure to like this video as well, because it helps with the growth of the channel. And in the coming videos, we're going to explore further and deeper the metaphysical state of the world, and also talk more about what we can do collectively to counteract the bad tendencies that the world is in. What can we do to contribute to a shift in the energies, to a shift in the perspectives and the forces that currently dominate and are taking the world into a bad direction? So make sure to be part of this journey. All the best. Be blessed.